Good evening, and welcome to the July 6th Pasco City Council regular meeting. At the regular meetings, we conduct business and act on previously discussed items. Agendas for those who are present in person are available in back. City Council is televised via Spectrum on channel 191, also live streamed on Facebook. If you are present in the audience, please silence your cell phone. For those who wish to speak who are live in the audience, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We recognize that we have one individual signed in electronically. And last but not least, per the Governor's Inslee's Healthy Washington Roadmap to Recovery Phase 3, we are live in person. But for individuals who are participating in person, we ask that you wear a mask where possible. With that, I will turn it over to the clerk to call roll.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Present.
Maloney.
Present.
Milne.
Present.
Roach.
Present.
And Serrano.
Present.
There are 5 present.
All right, and Mayor Martinez is excused, and so is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. With that, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, we will roll into the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless a council member requests to remove. So with that, item A is approval of meeting minutes for the Pasco City Council meeting held on June 21st, 2021, and the workshop meeting held on June 28th, 2021. The second item, item B, is for bills and communications to approve claims in the total amount of $421,689.70. Item C, an appointment to Franklin County Mosquito Control District Board of Trustees to confirm Mayor Martinez's appointment of Stephen Booth to represent the city of Pasco on the Franklin County Mosquito Control District Board of Trustees through December 31st, 2021. With that, do we have any items to be removed? If not, a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
I'll second.
All in favor? Well, that's a roll call vote.
Councilmember Roach.
Yes.
Serrano.
Yes.
Alvarado.
Yes.
Maloney.
Yes.
Milne.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds
It's unanimous.
Alrighty, thank you. I see nothing in section 5 for proclamations and acknowledgements. So we will move to section 6, which is visitors other than agenda items. And this is the opportunity for the citizens of Pasco to provide input where we as a body make no decision on your comments. We ask that they're limited to 3 minutes per person. I recognize that first we have Mr. Robert Carasino signed in to speak electronically. Bob, are you there?
We have no attendees present at this time. No electronic guests.
Oh. And I don't see him in chambers. Okay, well, with that, if Mr. Carasino does pop in electronically or physically, we'll readdress this. Any other attendees that would like to speak? I see, ma'am, and go ahead. And please start with your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Cynthia Muse, and I'm a short-term resident and property owner in the city of Pasco, and a long-term resident and property owner in Franklin County, 65 years as a matter of fact. And it's an honor to be here tonight. I only wish that I could stand here with the greatest honor of being before Mayor Saul Martinez, because there's no more incredible family in the Tri-Cities than the Martinez family, as we on our farm know well. So I'm really disappointed that I didn't get to be here to face him personally tonight. I'm here tonight because I'm really concerned about the comprehensive plans of Pasco, the shoreline comprehensive plans, the county comprehensive plans, and whether they're being followed or not. As I drove in on Commercial Railroad and looked at those beautiful developments on all sides of me coming in here tonight, I know that a stellar job has been done by the city of Pasco and the shoreline developments along the east side of the city have been done just very well, award-winning well, and stellar. My concern is what's happening out in the far west of Pasco, where I'm afraid that we don't have that, unless there's something forthcoming here, that there's not a very well-developed plan that's going to be followed out there. And as we all know, when you follow well-developed comp plans, it brings hope to people, it brings trust, it brings goodwill, it brings all kinds of goodness out of what is. When comp plans are not followed, then all of a sudden there's mistrust, there's inability to work together, and there's anger. And that's why I am here tonight. These people here know me well as to where the anger is coming from. First, before I get into that, though, I'd like to talk about Pasco's vision for the comprehensive plan as it read. And I assume this is some 2012 version of it. It says all residents of the city are afforded access to the Columbia River. All citizens are. Pasco is oriented towards and connected with the river through parks, pathways, bikeways, boats, launches, and docks. The comprehensive plan of Pasco vision for 2027, and it was in the introduction, page 3 of that shoreline document. So from the beginning, the access to the river has always been part of the plans. It's the lifeblood of the Tri-Cities, and we all people deserve the right to have access visually and physically to this river. And you people have done a beautiful job of that on the east side and to the middle section of Pasco. It is west of Chiawana Park where we have the concerns. And starting with the Franklin County Irrigation District, which is one of the most historic places in this county, starting with Native Americans and the Timmerman Ferry and the first waters that ever created green in Pasco, and like the third in line attempt to bring water to the rural part of Pasco and the urban part of Pasco was finally successfully completed for a 104-year-old irrigation plant, which is now going to be completely engulfed in residential development because of the zone changes that allowed that to be deviated from the comprehensive plans, which stated very clearly on all those plans that it was to either be a green space, it was to either be a park, a potential park, a viewpoint, open space, whatever. And that didn't happen, and it's about to be auctioned off here within a week or so. So my concern is that if people veer from these comprehensive plans and we begin to have mistrust and anger, then what's going to happen out in the far west of Pasco? You know, when we look at where that rock pit is going to go and where thank God for Richland that we do have a habitat and environmental, I can't remember the name of the area right now, habitat area there, only because Richland wanted to be annexed into or to take over some of the territory on the Pasco side of the river, that we have that beautiful refuge. So what's going to happen up that river as you allow developers to come in and for just a fee, a small fee to pay for, quote, future green space and parks, that they get to develop that land with no guarantee that there's any kind of access to the river for people. And yes,
Miss Muse, I'll ask that you wrap up, please.
Pardon me? Oh, yes,
yeah,
I
thank
certainly
you.
will. Whoever told me that, yes, thank you.
I'm the man behind the curtain tonight. Thank you.
Sorry. So, uh, to allow the far west of Pasco to become part of just the privileged elite. And I must admit that I live on the river and that's why I'm here tonight, is because I'm speaking out that the river and its access and its viewpoints and its use does not belong to just the privileged few. It belongs to everyone, even as far north as we can take it, even through the county. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else in attendance, or has Mr. Carasino popped online?
He has not popped online.
Okay, so again, if Mr. Carasino pops up later, we can readdress that. I see no one else for comments. And all right, moving along to, and thank you again for that comment, Ms. Muse. We will keep that under consideration. Moving on to item 7, which is reports from committees and or officers. We'll do 7A, verbal reports from council members. Do we have any, Mr. Maloney?
Thank you, Councilman Serrano. My report is that before this, earlier today, we had the Pasco Public Facilities District Board met. They will be bringing, I believe, to our next council meeting, they'll workshop that they'll be bringing forward a resolution that they'll have passed describing what they see as a future water park or aquatic facility and what that whole package would look like. So I believe that there'll be a full presentation and stuff. I'm sure Mr. Ratkai can expand further on that, but expect that on the next agenda for our next workshop meeting. But there'll be a relatively tight time frame within then to move forward with that. So expect that to be coming forward. They're doing a lot of hard work. They're putting in a lot of hours. Today, I think, was an hour-and-a-half meeting. And this was a special meeting that was outside their normal rhythm. And I believe they'll be meeting again possibly on Monday to try to finish the deliberation over their resolution and complete some legal changes to the document to make sure it's all buttoned up for us. So I'm excited that it's finally moving forward and we'll get a chance to see it. And in about 2 weeks, we'll get to vote on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, glad to have Mr. Milne back, our world traveler. I'm sure he'd happily present us with a PowerPoint presentation of his travels. But I do want to wish everyone a belated happy Independence Day. You know, we had a great weekend. Hopefully the Chiefs have very little activity to report at a later date. And I'm going to give a personal shout out to our first responders. We had an incident, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but we required their services at Station 83, and they helped a frantic mother and possibly saved a life. So I greatly appreciate their willingness to serve our community. And as I told the chief and the various responders, you know, it's one thing to pass a budget for 80,000 people. It's another to be one of the few that actually legitimately requires those services. And you never hope to be in that position. But again, a shout out to all of our first responders, you know, first class. Thank you very much. You know, a heartfelt gratitude from the Serrano family in particular this weekend. So Chief Gear, yeah, as I mentioned, I've already talked to the gentleman that helped. So thank you very much. With that, we'll move to the non-Saul Martinez, the non-emotional part of this meeting. I think it's the chair that brings it on. We'll go to item 7B. Director Sigdell, anything for the general fund monthly report?
It is normal. We are basically on track for all of our revenues and our expenses. One of the things that you'll see a little bit off kilter is related to some of our activities with the vaccination site and the testing site that was not necessarily budgeted, especially the vaccination portion of it. So we will be coming to council with fire department to do some budget adjustments. However, the good news is that we are expecting to be almost fully reimbursed by grant funds. So your revenue and your expenses will basically net to zero. So that would be the only thing. We're seeing fairly standard sales tax, and we are looking at, like I mentioned last time, of the inventory in the market and seeing how much of vehicle inventory will be available for sale, as well as the construction market as well. So that's something that we're monitoring, but we're not seeing any adverse impact as of yet.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yep. Councilman Malone.
Thank you. Ms. Sigdahl, when I'm looking at the last page there where we're talking about the tracking report, I see that there's a listed amendment of $714,000, but the contract amount stayed the same. Could you help me understand what we're trying to present there?
That is my error in adding. I'm fairly sure that is a formula error. So it should really be, the contract total should be $3.9 million.
So when we're looking at the amendments on this, I thought this was, it's listed as under 300K. So I guess I'm kind of confused on why we have a $700,000 amount. Is this something that's been separately approved by council? I'm trying to recall the genesis of this, and maybe.
I believe how our Public Works Department reports it is all of the cumulative amendments. So they go with the first contract amount, the beginning contract amount, and then the amendments after that. So this is probably an addition. So there's could be a couple of amendments since the first contract was accepted by the council. However, I am not 100% sure on that answer, so I can go back and clarify that for you.
Appreciate that. If I'm happy to take that offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Maloney. Anyone else? All right. Then we will move to item number 8, hearings and council action on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto. Item 8A is, I believe, a continuation, right? Or did we close this and are we reopening? Where are we on this?
It's a continuation, Councilman.
Okay. Thank you, Director White. So this is a continuation of the, I'm going to say it wrong, but I believe it's Tverdokhleb street vacation portion of Road 97. And Director White will take us away with that.
Thank you. And again, I just refer to the applicant by that term, the applicant. It's hard for everyone to say. But this is a continued public hearing and involves a vacation of a portion of Road 97 that's halfway between Argent and Court Street. It involves several lots that were created many, many years ago without public street frontage. So we have existing parcels, and it was annexed into the city in approximately 2015. So the owner of one of those parcels applied for a building permit for a single-family home. In accordance with our municipal code, he is required to perform street improvements on the public right-of-way, which, as you can tell by the aerial photographs, would be simply out of place and very expensive, and they would be conducted in a piecemeal fashion, which means they could stay there literally forever and not have matching street improvements anywhere else. A vacation process was suggested to the applicant. Before the legal analysis was conducted, it was assumed that the public right-of-way was obtained through some kind of subdivision process. It wasn't. It was purchased by the county without the benefit of the subdivision, meaning that if it was vacated, the ownership of that right-of-way would revert to the original owner, and that was the problem in the first place, access and the relationship between the new owners and the original owner. So after quite a bit of hand-wringing, 3 options were developed for council's consideration. The third option is the recommended option. That would be to deny the vacation request, therefore maintaining accessibility for the applicant and the adjacent owners. And then staff would prepare a deferral for, at some undetermined date in the future, imposition of some kind of street improvements. Hard to say what would kick that off. Probably a local improvement district, perhaps, or maybe some catastrophic failure of the septic systems to require sewer extension. But at present, that seems to be the most acceptable solution to this unique problem.
Thank you, Director White. Before we move into the public comment, do we have any comments or questions by council? Okay, seeing none, I think I have to bang the gavel, right? 3 times? All right. All right, the public hearing on the Tverdokhleb Street vacation portion of Road 97 is open. Do we have any members of the public who want to speak, either present, physically present, or online? Okay, I will offer a second time. Anyone who would like to address council on this issue? Going, and the third time, anyone who would like to speak on behalf of this issue? With that, I close it, right, Eric? This hearing is closed, and I will ask for a motion by council.
I move to deny the vacation request of south 329.29 feet of the south 329.29 feet of Road 97 located south of the Moonlight Acres subdivision.
I'll second that.
Any further comments? If none, is this a roll call or is this? Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Moves unanimously. All right. Moving down along to number 9, ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings. There are none. Item 10, unfinished business. 10A is resolution. American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funds business support program with Pasco Chamber of Commerce. This is coming from Director Sigdell. Thank you.
Thank you. Evening, Council. The resolution that you have in front of you is a resolution to approve the contract that is attached to your agenda report as well. And as a summary, ARPA funds are the $18.4 million that the city is allocated. Early June, I believe it was the 8th, we received half of that allocation with an understanding that we will be receiving the remainder of the funds in the next 12 months from the federal government. And part of that, we had discussed what council would like to do with those funds, and a business support program was definitely high on that list. And to expedite this process, given the need in our community, especially of our businesses, we're proposing that we partner with Pasco Chamber of Commerce. And the unique opportunity that ARPA brings is that we've learned a lot through CARES Grant. And one of the things that we've learned is different types of assistance that our businesses could use. And so you will see 3 different parts of this contract. However, I would like to say that the final rule from IRS has not been, Department of Revenue has not been received yet. So things could change a little bit, and we'll definitely come back to you. But the three aspects of this program would be to, of course, create a business assistance grant for all of our businesses that have been impacted by COVID. And furthermore, create a business education program, which is something that we recognized as local governments, but also Chamber as well. They were involved in business grant assistance program, partnering with the Franklin County for the CARES grant. And accounting was one where there was a lot of need for our businesses to learn how to do QuickBooks, somebody to train them to pay for those kinds of softwares. Regulatory compliance overall, we all know that sometimes it's not easy to read RCWs or our codes, things like that. So assistance with that, but also training on where to go, how to read some of those codes, what applies to their businesses, business development, market analysis, and inventory control overall. So those are just few areas as an example that Chamber of Commerce has proposed. And furthermore, the last portion of it would be to create a business portal that would be a source for more resources for our businesses and a place to come together and discuss issues as well. So that is the proposal in front of you. There are some details in terms of the revenue loss period, at least for this go around. We're proposing that we do all the way from the beginning of the pandemic, which was March 27th, 2020, to December 31st, 2021. And if we need to extend that in future, based on the data that we see from our businesses, we can come back to the council at that time. So that is our proposal, and we would like your feedback and see what direction you'd like to take. I apologize for bringing the discussion and the resolution together.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's good to get this. I know Councilman Maloney this has kind of been his drum to beat, right? You know, as quickly as possible. And we all feel the same way. Let me be clear about that. I suspect you have some comments, Councilman Maloney.
I do, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Sigdal, for moving so quickly on this. I know that sometimes, especially when we're in an area of uncertainty with our guidance, that it's very difficult to move forward. And I appreciate you supporting this council's willingness to take a little bit of risk here. I think relatively low risk reading through the guidance, but risk nonetheless. But to move forward on something like this quickly. Other than everything looking very good, I appreciate the fact that it's business assistance as well as funding, because we know that, as you'd mentioned earlier, that was a big issue. The one question I had was, we spent a lot of time during the CARES Act defining what businesses would be eligible for that. And this one is much looser in its definition. I believe it says small businesses and nonprofits, and that's the extent of the definitions. Now, small business under federal rules, I think, can be fairly large in terms of a City of Pasco business.
Yes.
And I know we're capping the overall potential grant at, I think, $30,000. I'd welcome Mr. White's opinions on this as well. In terms of, are we narrowing this scope enough to make sure that the businesses most in need are getting the help that they need? Can we speak at all to that? Why do we make that decision and not a more refined one?
Well, we wanted to be, at this time, the idea was to be as broad as possible. And as we get more information, to refine it if we need to. However, casting a wider net so that we can help as many people as possible. We do have $1 million allocated or requested for allocation. And there is a lot of different pots of fundings directly from the federal government through its many agencies. We're also awaiting to see, our hope is that we will have very similar type of program via our Franklin County as well. And so I think at $30,000 we can serve a lot of people. And especially with our small businesses, we did have very refined criterias with our CARES. And I definitely will not say that we will not have to go down to that detail, but we did want to start with what we're allowed so far. There is a requirement that you have to show that you have been adversely affected, and that will require some of the details of bringing your tax information, your revenue receipts from prior year to this year, unfortunately. So while we don't go into that and put that language in there that demonstrating adverse effects financially kind of covers that ground.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't have any objection at this time, I guess, to the how broad it is. With the part of the business assistance portion of helping navigate people through this process, will that include directing them to other potential funding sources that may match them better, or be in addition to what we as a city are providing?
We are internally looking into a position that is a navigator, and this person would not just help businesses for city-related activities, but also be aware of resources that are available to them locally, statewide, and federally as well. So if we do have a business or an individual who comes to us, this navigator would be able to assist with, like for example, if we have don't know the word that they're using, but a facility that is completely closed, like a movie theater, that there are specific lines of federal funding that are available via the Small Business Association that can be accessed, and so this person would be able to help them navigate to those areas or get loans, as we had discussed, for businesses who have had reduced revenue and hence might not be able to receive loans in the private market.
I appreciate that. And that's separate from this contract, obviously.
That would be separate, yes.
My only comment would be it'd be important to make sure that that person, if there's a position that fills that role, that they're well tied into this, so we don't have businesses getting confused with applying once to this, and then now they have to try to go submit more paperwork to different ones. Most businesses, especially ones who are in such dire need of assistance, don't have the time or resources to be able to pull themselves out necessarily, let alone go work through a bunch of different bureaucratic. So if we can make sure those are synergized, I'd be really appreciative. Anyways, thank you so much, and thank you for working really quickly on this, and I'll certainly be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Maloney. Councilwoman Roach.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Sigdell, for bringing this forward. And my question, maybe it's for you or somebody else. I know that City Manager Zabel is on the board. One of many of the criticisms that we had with CARES and the feedback that we got was just how the funds were used and distributed. And so my concern, my inquiry is about, processing the grants is one heavy lifting part of this, these ARPA funds. But then there's also the educational program around regulatory compliance, business development, accounting, market analysis, all of these different things. And what I know from DPDA is that they maybe have 2 full-time to 3 full-time staff, maybe, and wondering, just as a city council member, how much effect that had on what they were able to do, how many people they were able to process, contacts they were able to keep up with. And so I'd like to know about and vet Pasco Chamber. I know we have a great, excellent partnership with the Chamber and have a lot of confidence in their director, Colin Hastings, but do they have the capacity to do this role? And how many, so staff, can you speak to that at all?
Yes, we did discuss, I was impressed by how quickly they were able to allocate a lot of grant funding with CARES Act. And we're always looking at the best practices and the most effective use of administrative cost as well. And they do have the resources to manage the grant for sure, because they were able to do that not that long ago in the similar scale for Franklin County. The business education program, however, is a longer period and would require for them to come up with the program. We have discussed a lot more. These are kind of the chapters, but then there's a whole training program that needs to go into it and a structure that needs to go into it, and how we attract the businesses, how we incentivize them is a discussion that we will still need to have in the next 6 months, I would say, and form a really strong program. The good thing about ARPA is that we have till the end of 2026 to spend. And yes, so 2024 is the firm date after which, or before which, if you have allocated the funds to some use, then you can utilize it for till 2026. So our goal is with Chamber of Commerce to have those education programs for the next 3-4 years. And we do not believe that resources would be an issue at that time.
Thank you. That anticipated part of my follow-up question, which was how long to turn that over into actual programmatic tangibles. And so that's helpful information. So I would just encourage city staff to make sure that they have capacity and that they're building that into the chamber.
We will do that.
Yes, I think as Director Sigdell mentioned, the CARES money had a pretty short fuse on it. So that had to be rolled out and implemented very quickly. And not that we're not going to do that with this. We've learned from that. The other thing I would add with the CARES money that was administered by DPDA is a lot of that was CBDG block grant money, which has even more strings on it. So that complicated the process even more and involved city staff to a much higher level than this will in terms of review and use of the software and those kind of things. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach. Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you, Councilmember. My question is very much in a similar vein, but perhaps a little bit different. Do we or does federal government have any kind of outline of the percentage of management versus actual services provided? How much is allocated to management, and how much is allocated to staff doing the one-on-ones, things of that nature. Do we get to that level? Do we have any kind of outline of what we expect?
Oh,
Go ahead, Risha.
Not from this grant. We do have usual overhead rates that the federal government will accept without any formal approval. And so you can go through a formal approval, which takes quite a bit of work. And that could be as much as you can show your overhead rate is. But without that work, the federal government allows 10%. However, in this case, for a grant and a subrecipient, we have not seen any limit to an administrative cost ceiling.
Yeah, I'd be interested in at a certain level concerned
Yeah.
about what that would look like, and
Yeah.
I just I would love to see some future monitoring of is this sufficient? Is this too much? I'd hate to write checks that were like, oh yeah, for this
Yeah.
percentage, and that equates to quite a bit of taxpayer dollars, and so we'd be really trying to meet that right balance.
Yes, and that was one that we struggled with as well, and I would say Chamber did as well as we were discussing the aspects of the contract. And if it makes you feel any better, we do have a requirement within the contract that asks them to break down the administrative costs by program areas. So a grant program is going to be a lot less administratively burdensome than your education program. Because education is very labor intensive, you have to reach out, it's a longer period, so that's a whole level of effort as we just discussed. And also, so by labor, marketing, software purchases, and professional services. So by program areas, so if you're doing grants, then those types of costs for the breakouts, and then by the education program and how much it would cost to administer the business portal as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. I certainly do want to, having said that, I do certainly appreciate the speed in which staff put this together, and also the willingness of having a partner also. And so I really appreciate seeing that, and just thank you for that.
I'd just like to add that I would be interested in having metrics applied to the chamber to report back, determined by staff or council, I'm not sure, but on how those funds not only are being used, but maybe metrics on success.
Yeah.
How many people served and how successful they were, those business owners. Thanks.
Any additional comments? No, I appreciate this discussion because I think it's important that we're good stewards of this money in both our timeliness of our response, but also, how we ensure that it's protected. We heard last week from the LBA, the Latino Business Association, that they're interested in participating, and we've got obviously competent staff at the Chamber of Commerce. So we're very fortunate and blessed that we have organizations that are very interested in. Director Sigdell, I appreciate your work here, so thank you. With that, I'll ask for a motion.
All right, I move to approve resolution number 4075, approving an agreement with the Greater Pasco Area Chamber of Commerce, a Washington nonprofit corporation, for the business support program with American Rescue Plan Act funds.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us to item 10B. Again, ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, Utility Assistance Program with Franklin County PUD. It looks like this is a continuation and further discussion. I see no action. Director
Yes,
Sigdal.
yes, you're right. There is no action for this, but we wanted to discuss it and bring it to, for action next week. If council is, if council is okay with some of the details, but we also would like some of your direction and how you'd like to move forward with this program as well. Again, a lot of lessons learned from CARES Act, and Franklin PUD unfortunately has not received either CARES Act or ARPA funds at all. So they have partnered with Franklin County last year to help with utility assistance program. And this year we're partnering with them. And some of the lessons learned from last year was that we have a huge overlap between customers of Franklin PUD and the city of Pasco. So it does not really make any sense for us to have two different programs. And we also have different strengths and weaknesses given just our staff makeup. And we found that we complement each other perfectly in that. And so what we're proposing is for the two organizations to work together for outreach. We have the same program, and they are helping residents within the city of Pasco, and they're requesting $500,000 to help our residents with their electric utility. What it would look like for our residents is that they would apply for in one place. They can come to the city of Pasco, to our city hall online, or they could go to Franklin PUD, and they would file for one application, and through that one application, their electric, water, sewer, ambulance, stormwater, all of those utility bills would be paid. We also discussed some of the issues with some of our residents who, though deeply impacted by COVID-19, have still been paying their bills as much as they can. So we are also proposing that we provide them, if they're able to certify that they have been impacted by COVID-19, that we provide them with a credit. We're open to what that credit could be. As staff, we've discussed anywhere from $300 to $500 that cannot be refunded as a cash to the customer. But that would also help a lot of our customers, especially as the weather has gotten hotter. So water consumption goes up, electric utility consumption goes up as well. So that is our proposal at this time. We're still working through the details. But if you have any directions, we'd like to include that and come back to you next week.
Okay, thank you, Director Sigdal. Any comments? And I do appreciate the example of the city and county working together, lesson learned. Any comments? I've got some, but I'll hold them.
I'm just interested in the understanding how you came up to the $300 to $500. Is that just taking a look at the average of bills that people have outstanding?
Yes, not outstanding, but essentially it covers about 3 to 5 months of utility in average. It depends on what types of services you have. But an average bill for the city of Pasco could be anywhere from $40, $50 if you just have water, to $90 to $100 depending, on a normal month. So that was our idea with 3 months at least of utility services, and if they need more, we can discuss that in the next round of funding as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Maloney.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Sigdal, for putting this together. I guess I'm a little confused about the credits part, and so I'd love to see more information but I'm supportive of the concept, and I would very much be interested similarly as to how that might be calculated. So as staff develops this further, I'm very interested in understanding, formulaically, so we can make sure that we're being fair and equitable to all applicants. In whatever fashion that needs to look like. I just want to make sure that we're applying this in a reasonable, fair, and justifiable fashion. We know that some of these things may ultimately, as things shake out, things can get very complicated, and I'd love to make sure that we have a specific and very clear foundation as to where we're coming from on these, not just, Councilman Maloney pulled it out of the hat, and that's not what we're doing. That's not the conversation I want to have down the road. So my understanding here is that it's a total of $1 million out of the city's ARPA allocation, with the idea that 500,000 of that would be for city utilities, and 500,000 that would be for PUD utilities.
That is correct.
Okay. The city of Pasco is also served by another electrical utility, isn't it? Or is it just the one? It's just is it the irrigation?
I
Maybe that there's
believe
two different districts
Big
on?
Bend Electric, yes, we have a few people. I don't know if we
Yeah.
have them within the city limits though.
Very, very tiny group on Big Bend Electric.
Are you?
So I may suggest that if we have some city of Pasco residents who would be excluded just simply because they're not with Franklin County PUD, I would recommend that we find a way perhaps to, maybe through the city portion, could provide that assistance if otherwise the person would qualify for it. So I do not want to forget those folks either.
Good point. We will look into that.
Otherwise, again, thank you, and we know that if we don't spend all this money, this will come back and will be reallocated to other priorities. So I'm okay with over allocating. Hopefully people are doing well in our city and will not need all this money, but hopefully they'll get the help if they need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Maloney. Councilman Alvarado.
Yes, thank you. I know how much of a problem this is. I'm definitely in support of this. But no, we have seen in even some of the work we do, we find a number of folks who've taken advantage of the different services and the different organizations providing service. And I don't know if those are verifiable or if there's, the churches and all those folks. Yeah. And if that's, if we're looking into that, we don't want to become investigators of this thing, but at the very least from our end to make sure that these are being allocated to the right folks and just to have some good, I guess, ways to prevent that if from our end.
We do have a language in the contract that we're working on right now that asks for people to certify that they have not received the same assistance from other state or federal agencies. An assistant from a church would be hard to say because it's kind of private in nature, but by certifying that you have not essentially asked for Franklin County for the same sort of assistance, and with City of Pasco for the same thing. Essentially, you take the same bill and you receive double the amount. We are asking for people to certify that they have not done that. In the event that we get audited and that application gets pulled, and the federal government is asking for that person to show further proof, because they will get all of these receipts at the end of the day, then that would be upon that person to prove to the federal government that that they were truthful in their application.
I just have a thought. I would consider myself having received assistance because I received those cash cards for my children, because the Pasco School District is, I didn't apply for them, but as an applicant, maybe not knowing, thinking of the school district as a state or a local government agency, I'm just thinking about it in terms with the lens of a lay person who's outside the know. They might think, oh, I got assistance, and so I don't qualify to apply for this. So maybe spelling out what is, what isn't, that would be helpful.
We'll bring that back to you.
Thanks.
Thank you. A couple comments from my perspective. I always want to feed Mr. Ferguson and his staff. Let's just make sure that prospective credits are analyzed under the gift of public funds. I know that the Attorney General's office has the opinion that's liberal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, prospective credits kind of is a little bit of a concern, even though we're taking this more lenient, open approach to gift of public funding. So let's just ensure that anything prospective payments doesn't run afoul of this. And then the second comment I had escaped me, and I'm trying to think back. Oh, in defining affected or impacted individuals. I've seen on applications where it says, have you or your dependent contracted or however, had COVID-19, right? Well, there may be those who had it recovered and no impact, right? So I would be a little concerned of just having that blanket statement. You know, for example, if you had it, didn't miss any work, didn't have to pay any extra daycare, etc., you're probably not financially impacted. Now, socially, emotionally, we can discuss that, but that's not what the intent is here. So I would just suggest that we find a way to well define what that impact is. And obviously, I know you're going to dig into some type of certification of financial, and maybe we just use that term, financial impact. Those are the only comments I have. Anything else from council? If not, staff, do you have enough direction or thoughts from this?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item number 11, new business. 11A is an ordinance, Jankelson Road, Jankelson and Road 68 joint venture rezone. Director White.
Thank you, Counsel. And this item is for a 3.5 acre parcel located on the northwest corner of Road 68 in Argent. It kind of wraps around the McGill restaurant, existing McGill restaurant there right on the corner. The applicants have indicated that if all were approved, they would consider enlarging this proposed zone change to include some properties to the north, which is under their ownership. They also have indicated that they intend to conduct multifamily construction on the site once it's fully assembled. The hearing examiner conducted a public hearing on this on June 9th, and has forwarded to City Council a recommendation of approval, and no appeal of that recommendation has been received. I forgot to mention, though, that the existing zoning is commercial 1, C1, mixture of C1 zoning and RS12 zoning, kind of an unusual combination there. The request is to change that to R4, residential high density.
Okay. Now, this isn't a hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any comments from council?
I'm gonna make the obvious comment just about traffic, which I know Director White, you've probably heard a million zillion times, so I'm just gonna say it and leave it at that.
Councilman Maloney.
I'll take it one more step further. Mr. White, where would you expect the entrance in to the location be? On Argent, would that be the expected entrance? Because I know that Road 68, even through there, can get quite busy, and I'd be concerned about what the main entrance would look like.
Well, I
Just
can't say
hypothetically,
for,
yeah.
I can't say for certain because it's not a project yet, but it seems obvious that the access would be from Argent. There's actually a slope problem with the site, both the site you see and the site further north. So it's unlikely it would come from Road 68.
Okay, great. All right. Otherwise, I was surprised to see this because I was thinking this was into being commercial, but it makes perfect sense. The reasoning that the hearing examiner put forward that this fits the intent of the comp plan and the zoning here. So thank you.
Any other comments? With that, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4541, rezoning a portion of the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 9 North, Range 29 East, WM, parcel number 117-642-072, from C1 and RS12 to R4, and further authorize publication by summary only.
We have a motion, a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilwoman Roach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. With that, Mr. Zabel, do we have any item 12 miscellaneous discussion?
Actually, we do have our earlier visitor that wasn't able to get on is on now if council wants to entertain that before.
Yep.
Zach?
Mr. Kerosene, are you there? Bob? Is he muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you now, Bob.
Oh, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to you. I previously talked to you back in, I believe it was October, when you considered the expanded urban growth boundary plan and the comprehensive plan of the county and city. I was concerned there about two main issues: the traffic congestion, which I think you folks are all familiar with, and probably something that needs to be even given more consideration if the stories of Costco moving into the Road 100 area are true. But tonight I'd like to talk to you about something that is even more urgent, and that is the second concern I raised about the need for someone on the city council to take the reins here and really urge the city to act now to preserve public access to some of the shorelines and the land areas along the Columbia River in the areas on the west side of the city of Pasco and the northwest area that will become the city of Pasco under the urban growth boundary expansion area. As we can all see, the development of those areas is moving far faster than I think any of us had anticipated. Very large scale projects are already underway on the south side of Burns Road, and the Burns Farm area to the north of Burns Road is also being developed. There are only 4 or 5 major landowners in this area. And once that land is converted to residential or multi-purpose housing uses, it is going to be impossible for the city to go back and try and obtain adequate parklands to let this essentially new city that you're going to have growing in West Pasco, 40,000 more people, have access to the river and not feel like second-class citizens when they look across the river to the city of Richland and see parklands, walking and biking paths running the full scope of the Columbia River on the other side. Now, I realize that on the other side, the Corps of Engineers owned much of the land and it was easier to do, but the city of Pasco has to act today, in my opinion, much like the city of Seattle did in the late 1800s when they hired the Olmsted brothers to develop a park plan for that then very small city, smaller than what Pasco is now. But they developed a plan and obtained land, and now they have jewels of parkland areas in the city that were preserved because they acted early. You have an opportunity even today to act because the Franklin Public Irrigation District has 4 lots along Court Street just to the south of the I-182 bridge, which they have put up for auction for residential lots. This would be a wonderful opportunity for the city to obtain some public access land to the river and preserve for those 40,000 future citizens and the current, how many, 60,000, 70,000 citizens that are already within the city of Pasco, to have access to the river in this area. I hope you don't think it's entirely hyperbole, but I do believe that for a number of years, there are going to be tremendous traffic problems with access to the other side of Interstate I-82, that is the south side, for the people in Pasco living Road 68 to Road 100 areas all the way to the Columbia River as these areas continue to develop, because you're going to be always playing catch up with development of access roads. And it's, you know, I lived in Seattle. I know how long it takes to get things built. The best of intentions always come down to, do we have the money? And you won't have the money to build a new interchange at Road 100 and I-182. So there's going to be terrible traffic congestion. It's going to be hard for people to get from the north end of the new Northwest Pasco to the parks that you have down in the south part of the city. So I plead with you, not for myself. I don't need the access. I'm 72. It's not going to help me any, but it's going to help the future people who live in the new area of Pasco, which you're developing, and which I know you want to be a first-class city area, rather than putting them in a situation where we'll have all the population, we'll have all the traffic, but we will have the natural amenities that are so important to this area. I mean, we are known, the Tri-Cities, as we know that the number one resource we have in this area is access to the river. So I urge you, consider going into private session and talking about whether you might be able to do something to acquire some of these lots that are otherwise going to be sold at auction on July 20th by the Franklin Irrigation District. And also consider whether you should be talking to the 4 or 5 families that own the majority of the farmland along the Columbia River in the urban growth expansion area, and try to cut a deal to obtain some of that land for a large city park that is going to be necessary to serve those 40,000 people, as well as try and provide some access along the entirety of the Columbia River in the new area of Northwest Pasco to provide access for hiking and biking activities. So I don't want to take any more of your time. I know you've got a busy schedule, but unfortunately, you are the council that have the opportunity and the responsibility to do something, because the opportunity is not going to be here next year. The plans are being developed so quickly that you won't have access to that area. Now, I know there is some desire perhaps to convert the gravel pit into a partial water ponding area that may be connected to the Columbia River. That isn't really a substitute for acquiring some of the farmland now before it turns into residential property that is already along the Columbia River. I was an environmental employee of the Department of Energy for many years, and I can tell you, my viewpoint is it's likely going to be very hard to tie in that old gravel pit into the river. There's probably going to be a National Marine Fisheries Service concerns about warm water and predatory fish and other things that will not make that an easy task. But obtaining some of the land that is in farmland now, and it could be acquired before roads and streets and sewers and water lines are put in, making the price skyrocket should a future council want to do it, is something that I urge you to consider. And so that's the sum of my comment this evening. And I really appreciate you taking me out of order here and letting me speak to you.
Absolutely.
I would be glad to take any questions if you have them.
Typically, we don't have questions from council to members of the public during this comment period. So we appreciate your comment, Mr. Carasino, and I hope you're enjoying retirement.
I do. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Back to you, Mr. Zabel, on item number 12, miscellaneous discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did want to ask the two chiefs and Director Ratkai to give us council a little bit of an update as July 4th weekend activities. And I'll maybe start off with Director Ratkai.
I'll catch up to you there. I wasn't expecting.
Oh, okay. Then we'll start off with Chief Roski.
Sure, thanks. Council, we had a relatively active 4th of July. The city had some good programs going. Our officers were up at the stadium and down on the waterfront. And all reports that we had back was a very patriotic crowd, no major issues. The town celebrated appropriately, and we had some activity level when it came to fireworks, but it was nothing that we hadn't seen in years past. So it wasn't a worse year, it wasn't a better year, but we did see a well-behaved public out there, and a very cooperative public when our officers did confront them and have to talk to them about fireworks violations. And so quickly over the weekend, over the 3-day period, this year, officers responded over 900 calls for service, with 200 of those being fireworks calls, and over 100 of those fireworks calls occurring the evening of the 4th that they were responding to complaints. That doesn't mean every one of those was illegal fireworks. Oftentimes, people complain about legal fireworks because they're noisy, and we understand they have pets and other things that bother them. So not every one of those was illegal fireworks, but there were certainly calls that we responded to. And then we developed a task force that on that evening of the 4th that officers would just respond looking for violations and enforcement when education wasn't appropriate to those violations. And they issued over 23 violations of actual fireworks, of the fireworks ordinance that evening. So I guess pleased to report that we did have some enforcement, we did have some violations, but overall our officers came back and said it was a very good weekend overall, and certainly the 4th was. And I think people were appreciative of what the city did as far as celebratory activities. So thank you.
John, could you throw the slides up there? I got a couple slides for you, Counsel. We didn't, overall, community-wise, which is kind of what we look at in fire because we all share quite a bit of stuff back and forth. It got busy. We never got overwhelmed overall throughout the community, but it was fairly busy. As you can see, in 21, a total of 46 calls that we ran just in that 24-hour period on the 4th. Of those 21 or 46, 15 of those were fires, various types of fires, including dumpster fires. We had 8 natural covers or fires in vegetation, 4 dumpsters, 19 EMS calls, 2 motor vehicle accidents, which would fall into the EMS as well, and 4 other types of calls. And typically those are calls that get canceled before we arrive, going to another category. We did not receive any mutual aid in Pasco, but we did provide mutual aid to other agencies. 2 fires, 1 residential structure fire and 1 natural cover. We provided a mutual aid to a couple of medical calls in other cities, and 5 others. Again, those are ones that were canceled. We went to Benton County 1, the fire district surrounding the city of Kennewick 4 times, to Kennewick Fire Department 3 times, and to Richland Fire 2 times. But we did not have to receive any. So our staffing, we were able to staff a couple extra units, and that was enough to keep us going through the day. And then in the next slide is just a comparison of years. This shows, days, the fireworks sale period, starting on the 28th, which was a Monday. Kind of an interesting day on the, this second here, I got to get rid of somebody. Sorry, starting on Monday, the 28th, and then you can see the compare the Monday or the 28th, the day of the opening day of fireworks sale starts on the 28th. You have 2019 in the gray, 2020 in the blue, and 2021. Those are numbers of calls on those days. Why in 21 Wednesday, the 30th, happened to be a big day, a lot of calls. What prompted that day, we're not quite sure. In fact, didn't even realize it till we built this table today and looked at it and thought, what the heck happened on Wednesday? I had to go look at the calendar. What day of the week even was that we jumped way up like that? It went back down to normal, and then you see on the 4th itself, the 46 calls that we had, how that compares to previous years. And while it looks like we jumped up a lot on that day, what we're finding is overall we're going to probably increase calls through the year by well over 10%. Where we typically ran 13 to 15 calls, we're pretty consistently running 20 to 25 and some days 35 calls in a day this year. And not any particular type of incident. It's just been a very dramatic increase in activity this year. So that doesn't, that's fairly reflective of what went on these other days leading up to the 4th. So, any questions?
Chief, just for clarification, when you said community, is that Pasco or is that Tri-Cities that you're talking about?
When I say we work as a community, the fire agencies typically work. Is that what you're speaking
yeah,
of?
so those numbers are community numbers?
Or what? I'm sorry, David.
Those numbers are the region, or is that Pasco?
These are all Pasco
Okay,
numbers. Yeah,
right.
these are our activity level
Okay.
in the city of Pasco. But we did provide mutual aid quite a few times, and we're fortunate that we didn't need any mutual aid. We did have one building fire that occurred on the day of the 4th at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was in an apartment building that the owner had left a candle burning and went out of town for the weekend and caught her apartment on fire. So it was not fireworks related. So.
Okay, Zach. Okay, thank you. From a recreation side,
If I could,
Councilman Maloney's got it.
just had one question for Chief Giroir, a comment. I went and looked up the weather on that day. That was one of the hottest days, and it was when that evening that was gusty. So I wonder if people were maybe a little on edge because of the wind, the higher wind that evening, maybe set people on edge about fireworks. Who knows?
You know, I think one thing community-wide overall, and it's kind of an anomaly that so for somebody who's been in the fire business a long time, it makes sense. When the basin is in a drought, our fire activity is lower because there's just not as much grass. We don't grow as much grass on the ground, and where we see the high fire activity will be a little bit later in the year when we get lightning in the mountains, and then we'll go out on long-term assignments outside the area. When we have a wet spring, we get a lot higher fire activity. It's just opposite of what you would expect, but we get it's the same in the desert Southwest. When they have a wet year, they have a very busy fire year. When the Southwest goes into drought, it slows their fire year way down, and we follow that same pattern.
very interesting. Okay. Well, from a recreation standpoint, we offered a number of events despite not having the parade. If you recall, there was some ambiguity over our regulations for gathering, which prohibited us from planning a proper parade. But we were able to offer a number of events. Patriotic luminary bags, we issued 165 bags for that. We did our first year event, which was a family bike ride, had about 40 participants with prizes donated by local bike shops for the kids. Cardboard regatta was back in the pool, so that was always a fun event. The Kiwanis Brunch this year had estimated sales of over 200 breakfasts, 100 lunches. The remaining food went to the mission, to the shelter, to be served there. We had over 80 vehicles and 400 people at the car show, which was a big success, over 24 award categories this year. And then moving over to the stadium, we had the Jet City Motocross. We had 3 separate shows, about 15 to 20 minutes each. And we had an estimated number of about 1,500 people in the stadium as well. And those 1,500 people stayed for the fireworks display, which was seen all throughout the community. And those lucky 1,500 had a close-up view. We also did a Camp Patriot Fun Run. It was a virtual event. So according to reports, there's only about 17 people that ran that course. So we'll do a little bit more the outreach next year. And work on the parade there, but it was a good year for us, and we were glad to offer Grand Old 4th of July, a slightly abridged version this year, but glad to keep the fireworks.
Excellent. Thank you for those reports. Mr. Zabel, anything else?
So just a little bit more on ARPA, and so we talked a little bit tonight, and thank you for your action on the agreement with the chamber. We'll bring back the utility assistance program next week, of course, and then a couple of comments. Of course, there are other nonprofits that might be in a position to be able to assist the city as well in this, and in moving forward with the chamber, we wanted to kind of keep with council's urgency on this. We'd worked with them, had experience with them, and the county utilized them last time, and that was a pretty smooth operation. We felt that was a good way to get these first dollars out, but we'll probably go through a more formal process as we proceed in some of the other programs council may authorize. And then, certainly we have other items. There's, we had talked previously about MOPS, the police MOPS program, the fire resource navigator. Director Sigdell mentioned tonight, rescue plan navigator, which I think will, one of the reasons why we even need that is there's a ton of programs out there right now, which also explains why the limitations on the city program, because the money coming to the local governments like the city and the county aren't meant to be used necessarily broadly. They're pretty focused because there's other programs that address some of these other areas, and we're kind of just learning that right now. And to have someone with that level of expertise that can work with city staff, with chamber or other organizations and the community, and get those folks directed towards specific assistance for what they may need. I think that's going to be a really helpful resource for the community, and a good use of our dollars. So I wanted to just kind of share those thoughts with you before we ended the night. Because we only covered those two pieces. So with that, I didn't have anything further.
Excellent. And you mentioned ending the night. I'm hoping that means we do not have need for an executive session. Is that correct?
I did not intend on bringing an executive session.
Excellent. With that, it is.
Unless council has interest in one.
Oh,
I did have
sorry, Councilman Alvarado. Didn't see your.
Thank you, Mr. Sarno. Last week we had a workshop, and I think it was last week, where we brought MIG in, and they're talking about the Parks Recreation Master Plan. I certainly would love the folks who spoke today about the need for river access to really be, connected with that process. I think that they'll have some great things to add there. So encourage you to be a part of that. And I certainly would love to have that conversation when appropriate as a city, hopefully sooner than later. I think that's perhaps at a workshop may be a really good thing. I just wanted to express that as that is something I'm very much interested in.
Thank you, Councilman Alvarado. Any other parting thoughts? If not, just kidding.
Yeah, along those lines, I would note that, and Council Member Alvarado is correct, Parks Master Plan's underway. Also, we have the Broadmoor Master Plan kicking off, which there's been a lot of discussion about that riverfront access, the possibility of realigning River Shore Drive to the east to create room on that west side, because the property just drops off pretty quickly now. And I think we have the opportunity to develop something on the west side of that realigned road that's very similar to what the trail system we have that extends from basically Sacagawea Park all the way to Road 100. You'd have the opportunity to maybe create something along that area through easement or ownership. I know the Corps owns some property in there. Mr. Adams owns some property in there. And that's been some of the high-level, very futuristic planning discussions that we've had on this in the past. We haven't got into that specific on the Broadmoor Master Plan yet, but I can see that kind of going along that route.
Councilman Maloney.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Thank you, Mr. Sable. One of the things that I heard tonight was that there's urgency in that the window may be closing before we're ready for it to close. Mr. Zabel, what's your sense of how timely these master plans are going to be in terms of making sure that vision happens?
Well, we're not in a position to, except for the Harris Farm. Harris Farm is obviously a piece that is, I don't want to say it's development ready, because there needs water, sewer, utilities, other utilities out there. But they are, I think we're annexed in now. Yeah, not quite annexed in. Probably be annexed in the next few months. And at that point in time, they'd be able to start making plans for that. And then the other piece to the north of that, upriver, that's further out. I mean, the property owners' focus right now is on the commercial pieces and some of the residential pieces further east.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, then through the permitting process and the plan review would be an opportunity to make sure that those riverfront access and such and appropriate park facilities are being developed according to our overall need for the city. Is that correct?
I'd probably be a little more comfortable letting Director White address that.
I think so, Councilman Maloney, but to my best understanding, the two speakers tonight were concerned about the FCID property that exists along Court Street, that they have subdivided in conformance with the comprehensive plan, I might add, and they intend to apparently hold an auction for sale in the coming weeks. But both the Park and Rec, the Park Master Plan and the Broadmoor Master Plan will be taking a look, as Mr. Zabel noted, on future opportunities to either acquire neighborhood size parkland or perhaps even community or regional size parkland. It's going to be tough as you get further west, even from the interstate through the bridge, the 182 bridge, because it's all privately owned, with the exception of the core property, which is already public, of course, as you go further upriver.
Right, the Corps of Engineer property, that's that portion where kind of right after the bend, a little bit up there, and it's just in the initial part of that.
Yes,
well,
but they do have 10 acres a little further north of that connects with that natural area that we see as we drive up Shoreline Road.
Great, I guess I would certainly encourage staff to make sure that as we're creating these preparations, that is something that you only get one shot to invest in. And if there is an opportunity for us to smartly invest as part of that, I'd certainly, as an individual council member, I'd certainly be interested in hearing those options and make sure we're being really thoughtful about that. So thank you.
I support that as well.
And with that, I will leave one parting comment is if that FCID property seems to be something of value to the city, and the auction is in 2 weeks, if we need to convene in an executive session to discuss that next week, I'm personally amenable to that. I'm not going to push that. Quite frankly, I'd like to see what the property is and what the true value to the city would be. But I think that's one consideration. With that, seeing no additional comments, it is now 8:22 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.